style of January to fragment things.
Riders. So we're happy because last year there was one queer woman and now there are two. So maybe next year there will be three.
More!
So, pero sana pwede geometric progression, di ba? Pwede naman sana. Pero yun yung, yesterday we were mentioning na the lesbian or the queer women writers haven't, been writing as much or haven't been publishing as much. Maybe we're writing but not publishing as much as the gay men. And there's really so much to catch up on. So nice. Her book came out in 1993. And my book came out in 2010, and it's been it's almost 10 years. There's another one, Kate Pedroso, who self-published her stories, and that's about it. And then there's the other anthologies. There's Jeannie Villar, you met her yesterday, and Ida Santos published pair duo anthology called Woman to Woman. And there's Shakira Season and Ian Casopon, the duo anthology, the gay and lesbian book. What's it called again? Sorry. Don't Tell Anyone. Don't Tell Anyone. Which came out 2 years ago, I think. So that's about it. Shame poetry. So sa poetry. So sa fiction or sa prose works, parang yun na yun. And so, parang sa women's writing, when you think of the canon, the old canon, so sa feminist criticism, we have the guy of critics who had to unearth, so there's a stage of feminist scholarship that had to do with unearthing the works. And it is not because the women were not writing, it is because they were muted. So I think it's a similar experience for queer women, because essentially we are, well, don't use the word essentially. But it's because we are women, part of the experience of the writer is really the muting, I think. That's what I suspect, that there's a silencing. So when I issued the call for Tingle in 2016, I was surprised that even the ones that I had expected to submit didn't submit. And part of the problem really was that a lot of them, we used to be lesbian writers, or we used to identify as lesbians, had evolved into something else, and because it was so slow. And so we lost some of them, so the ones that is so-called usual suspects, we lost some of them to maybe the evolution of their sexualities, or to just, I don't know, not writing anymore. Because pag tumanda na, most of our work, they come out when we're young. So exciting ang energy talaga ng writers' workshops, especially because this is really, most of the fellows are really young, and they're doing a lot of their writing. So napakahalaga, I think, para sa isang workshop to encourage the writing. And so we hope that that kind of energy is what's fostered in this particular writing workshop, because kailangan natin encourage ating mga queer folk, para to keep doing what we're doing. It's not easy. It's really not easy. So today we want to celebrate the work of Rayji de Guia, and we have two stories: Death for Serafina and Here Come the Women. So when I was looking at this, at these two portfolios, they're similar because they're about older women. So parang iba yung energy niya. Yung kahapon, tinatanong natin si Joseph na confessional, yung mga work niya. Pero yung parang nakikita natin dito sa drafts ni Rayji na meron siyang sinasadya niya na hindi isulat yung sarili niya. Parang gano'n. So, pwede natin explore. Tanong natin si Rayji mamaya kung ano yung ano yung motivation no, para sulat yung characters na sadyang hindi siya. So older women, ang characters niya. And the other thing that I thought was interesting to note was that the main characters were dealing with the deaths of their husbands. So that's another thing there. Although one of them is frankly more directly or explicitly lesbian than the other. So I think one of the questions I'd like you to think about really is that what makes a story a lesbian story? So because that's the situation that's presented to us by these two ranks. All right. So with that, can we ask the fellows? What did you think? Yes.
Magre-react muna ako dun sa comment mo dun about the call for subs. Kasi I have several lesbian friends who I badgered literally to submit.
Was this in 2016 or 2019?
This one.
This current one. Oh, but it's a current content din.
Tapos meron silang willfulness to, or rather, this anger. I do not want to be subjected to the criticism of the institution. Di man lang the patriarchy, the institution. But they're not interested in my
work. Was he referring to me in particular?
Siyempre, di naman
Di
naman alam na ikaw yung screener or anything. Pero they're just saying that I don't want to be subjected to the criticism of the Khalid. Tapos, this includes people who self-publish, like Rayji self-publishes. There are a lot of queer women who self-publish, and meron silang anger against the institution. It's a term, anger. When I ask them if they want to submit, it's talagang rejection yung initial reaction nila sa concept of a workshop. Tapos, anyway, about Rayji's work.
But that's also something I guess to think about. I mean, choice naman yan eh. I mean, hindi naman talaga.
And the mission has always been more gay men than other sexualities and genders.
Why?
It's the same reality that made that several editions of the Dead possible. So there are so many more gay men, I think, who are emboldened to come out and write and be identified as such, because that's the requirement of this workshop, LGBTQ. Actually, we didn't require any thematic anything from you. You could well have submitted everything about Marian apparitions or what, tree frogs or whatever, and that wouldn't have. The idea is to expand what LGBT writing can be, and it means it can be anything. It can be about anything, because what is LGBTQ is perspective, not topic, not theme, not subject matter. So I wonder why that is so. I think it's because women are still probably subjected to harsher judgment than men when it comes to sort of talking about very personal things. I think the standard is the issue isn't so much that it's sexuality, it's that it's personal. We can talk about that. Men can actually turn the personal public more easily than women can, because I think the idea of women being keeper of secrets, being the repository of sort of personal knowledge, that's a stronger, more inviolable institution than men. Than the institution of men keeping knowledge. So that's just my take. I'm not sure.
So yun nga, yung I did mention that essentially, because it's because we're women. So regardless of the kind of subversion that we're doing to the patriarchal standards, we're still women, and part of the experience.
On the other hand, the other way to look at the obverse of that is that women are already have left. Men have a stronger right, gay men, and that women Kasi thinking of my own lesbian sister, who's
Your
being...
sister's lesbian?
Yeah.
My
But she
sister's
had
lesbian too.
she had no issues, unlike me, na may existential angst, nagka spiritual crisis. Siya wala. Straight from being tomboy girl, having a lot of girlfriends, to turning those girlfriends into romantic relationships. Walang continuity, seamless siya. Oo.
Seamless?
Seamless, yes. Didn't need to come out.
Didn't need to come
No, nothing was done. Ako yung medyo may one-on-one with my mom, may mga ganun siya, wala. I have a feeling, on one hand, so the other hand is that the oppression is stronger or greater for women. On the other hand, the leeway also and the allowance for not to talk about it, but simply to be it, is probably also greater for women too. Which is why the need to actually air your grievance is less, because the grievance is less. I'm not sure, I'm talking to my sister. Wala ko siya problema.
Is she femme or butch?
Butch.
Butch?
Butch, yeah. We have a military dad.
Oh.
Di ba?
Kaya gusto ng tatay mo yun, kasi butch siya. Lalaki eh.
Siguro, probably.
Kasi I think, pag may hierarchy tayo no, sa patriarchal society, mas ano pa kasi mas lamang pa rin yung mga bakla ba din, no? Kasi lalaki pa rin sila kahit paano. Saka yung butch naman, hahayaan yun ng patriarchy kasi sila ang pininimik kasi. Ang mahirap yung mga lesbiana na maganda tulad mo. Di ba yung babae, pero gusto ng kapwa babae, yun ang di matanggap. Yun ang di matanggap ng patriarchy.
It's nice we're talking about this. It's our first properly lesbian manuscript, right? Because we had a bit of a lesbian thing with Chofusa, but that was sort of like make believe lesbian. This is the first properly lesbian session, diba? So we need to talk about these bigger issues before we get to the manuscript.
So tomorrow hindi na siguro masyado, much more on the text, but I think we really need to articulate.
And also because Rayji's work is also myth-making or engaging with mythology. It is the ultimate flattery for any artist for his or her work to become the basis of fan fiction. Rayji's Here Come the Women is fan fiction that rips off or picks up from Summer Solstice by Tolkien, which has already achieved the mythic status, I would say. That is the ambition of all great stories. All stories, the best stories turn into myth. And that one is myth. No? And this is Rayji's sort of mythopia, no? Which is the remaking of the myth, or the continuation of the myth. So I think we can focus on the manuscript now, because probably we'll keep talking about these issues anyway as we get along.
Luna wanted to say something.
I'm just blend what I had, but I wanted to share yung silence, yung mga boses na mga lesbian. Ang nanay ko, nitong taon ito, ay nag-submit sa Liwayway ng isang nobela na may lesbian ka. At protagonist siya rin sa pangyayari. Saka, ang gusto ko ibahagi doon ay nakagugulat na at the age of 76, nasulat ng nanay ko nasabing paksa. Yung lesbiana doon ay inabuso ng isang malayong panglaan. Napilitan siya ng isang bakay at yun, hanapin ang kanyang sarili. So, isang balakid o isang obstacle kung bakit hindi sila masyado nagsusulat. Ako dun sa mas malaki ang paghahatol ng bituin sa kanila. Pag domesticated yung babae, ang dami niya kailangan gawin bago niya isulat yun. Yung parang ubos yung oras, magdidilig pa ng halaman, magtatanong sa ganyan, o magluluto, alagaan si ganyan, si ganyan. So, hindi ko yung writing kasi nagiging secondary siya. Pero yung pagtanggap, lesbian sila o hindi. Ano na yun? Natural na bahagi na ng kanilang pagkatao. Sa big deal. Maraming, hindi dahil nagkukubli sila kundi sa may mga mas mataas na concerns na dapat nilang kailangan. Kesa yung pagpiit ng kanilang sexualidad. That's what I think. yung na-observe ako, hindi lang sa circle ng academy, hindi, I've also worked with mga emerging women playwrights, Tony, hindi naman mga writer yung nag-aral ng mga ipagsulit o creative writing. Mga ano sila yung sa mga lugar nila, asawa, mga ganun na gusto nila isulat yung experience nila.
I think being a writer is an exception already. I mean, the norm is in our culture. Well, first of all, it's not a very bookish culture. Not everyone, the average Filipino family will not really buy books. Only books that are required by their children in school. No? So they'd rather buy food and other things. No? So being a writer is always, I think, an exception. And choosing that vocation is even more of an exception. So that's the rule. But then so many gay men are doing it. I think because the gay men probably receive more institutional incentive or support, or there's more encouragement for them to do it.
There's that too. Pero I think also that's a good point to make, no, na parang hindi priority yung pagsusulat para sa babae. I mean, even for myself, parang hintay mo talaga na nagawa mo na lahat ng kailangan gawin bago, medyo change of paradigm talaga yun na uunahin yung pagsusulat bago ang ibang mga bagay.
Kasi hanggang pa rin na pagiging nakasalita, which is tough. When they say, ang selfish mo naman.
So that kind of observation should hold true for straight women too. I mean, women, straight or otherwise.
Yeah.
Right?
But just to blend in yung comment niyo with the death of Serafina.
Yes.
My observation about the story is it was very quiet, and I love the quiet tone and the everyday texture of the story. Gusto ko yung hindi talaga nag-uusap ng magkakatulog, pero nagmamahalan sila sa kanilang sariling paraan. Yung arrival, hindi pa siya. The arrival of Lucretia in Serafina's house, arrival of Lucretia in
Sige, just keep talking. We can hear naman. Pero still use it and we'll just adjust. Technical.
So, nung dumating si Lucretia sa bahay ni Serafina, she took over the management of the office. Nakaramdam si Serafina na parang, pati ko yung nagiging boss. Tapos, totoo yung dating, may authentic touch ng story in terms of kung paano talaga makipag-usap ang mga magkakapatid. Nakikita ko yan sa observations ng mga chatting ko sa ibang mga kamag-anak. Na may mga iringan sila na hindi nila sinasabi.
Walang translation yung word na iringan.
May iringan sila. Oo, yung iringan kasi parang tunog eh, diba? May parang impit na amil dun sa isa't isa. Kasi mas well-off na yung bawat si Lucretia kaysa kay Serafina, pero siya yung mukhang mas maganda. Magaling ang fictionist na ito in terms of description. Alam niyo mag-characterize ng story. Ng character. Pero yung napansin ko lang dun sa Death of Serafina. Death for Serafina. Yung obsession ni Serafina na sana mamatay na lang ako. Meron siyang underlying na mamatay na siya. Oo, death wish. I think yun yung totoong paksa ng hindi pa yung the sisterly bond. At pag umabot ka dun sa ganung deduction, kung pangarap ng isang babae ng tanda ang mamatay na bakit, you begin to wonder kung ano ang nasa existence. Hindi mo siya kanila yung
She seems to be more unhappily married.
Unhappily married.
Yes, because they had started living apart or sleeping in separate rooms before the husband died.
Yes.
And she's parang her very snide remark about yung asawa ni Lucretia, hindi pa niya alam na namatay na. Parang mas may konting resentment o inggit din na yung sister niya had a happier married life than she did. So, yeah.
Kudos.
in pala.
Umuya na. So I was gonna just comment on the female empowerment of not here. That's for Serafina. Kasi parang, it didn't need to be lesbian. It's sisterly love. And that's, oh my God, ang lakas.
Masyadong.
Nakakatakot.
Echo pa, echo.
Yung
By the way, kudos ha, you made it. Uminom kayo hanggang alas 4. Buhay kayo, nandito kayo. Kaloka.
Jesus, lalo yung okay. My God, natatakot mo ito gamitin. And then, what? So that's very difficult. Kasi, at least from a male perspective, in a very macho-leaning society, when you think of two women characters, they are usually complements to their male characters, to the male characters in the story. And one of the, I guess, identifiers to the story as being written by a woman was that they were not supplements or complements to men. They were each other's characters. And that's what I liked about that first Serafina. What I would recommend for Rayji to revise or consider for revision would be the placement of the narrative in time. There are several anachronisms to the narrative that I felt was not 2019. I'm wondering if it is 2019. Among these was the echo bag. Because when I was reading it, I thought it was written in a period similar to Nick Locking, actually, before we got into the other story. Then for Serafina, their names alone seem to be influenced by Hispanic. So, but she was 25 after, and then plus, she got married at 25 and then another 45 years. So she's about 60. So she was born during the American occupation. Yet her name was Serafina, and then she had very restrictive biases, similar to a more Hispanic upbringing. So I was wondering if did the author decide to change the milieu at some point, because it was only actually the echo bag that threw me off when Lucrecia came in with an echo bag. Oh wait, they're echo bags. Oo, parang even if you remove the echo bag, I think I would have placed the story earlier, like the 80s maybe. Diba? The 80s would have been a more
80s or 90s siya.
80s or 90s. Pero the echo bag here,
There's a phone. There's a mobile phone.
okay lang, may mobile phone naman ng 90s.
Ganito ka kalaki.
Oo, ganyan kalaki.
Saan ba kayo
At saka, hashtag there,
Ano na yun, Nokia 33, 3110.
Yes.
Malit na yun.
Motorola.
At saka if you were watching Bumblebee, yung Transformers Bumblebee, meron silang weaponized na yung yung cellphone.
Sasagutin daw ni Rayji. Si minor, ano naman siya.
So, milieu lang naman.
I want to address that because when I write about the rural, I usually get preoccupied by the past talaga. Kasi like, when I write about the provincial, I think what distinguishes it from the Manila is that it can be preoccupied in the past. It's just a theory, very not clear thought about it. So, pero this story, I based it on what Maragondon is, which is very rural. Walang Jollibee, walang mall. We have a 7-Eleven. Pero, and recently lang, I wrote this kasi 2017, 2016, and published it last year. So, recently lang, nagkaroon kami ng Alpha Mart, gano'n. Pero,
It's Jollibee.
wala kaming Jollibee.
Hindi, Jollibee brand lang.
Oh, yun. Pero, yun nga, parang, how do I write about the rural without, the present rural, without it being assumed to be in the past?
May time lag talaga eh. We are existing, I think, in the Philippines.
Dati, I thought using memory could somehow be parang you need to be careful because sometimes it's deceptive. But here, parang gusto ko yung the act of remembering yung character.
I mean the reunion.
The reunion.
Between the two.
And those memories na like the classical Victorian and yung mga old women sa dulo na who survived.
Yes. Right.
There's quiet elegance writing. I mean, even in the narrative, the way it unfolds very quietly and very elegantly. May eloquence, quietness na to. But katulad ng mga ibang comments, parang it's kind of static also, caught up in the intimacy of the moment. So I suppose it's also a kind of writing style, very prevalent in both stories. But walang sociality outside the domesticity of the moment, yung domestic space, yung kitchen, yung hindi nga nagpa-factor in yung Maragondon dito, Maragondon-esque dito, in ways na nag-factor in yung CDO map or Davao, etc. So, parang masyado bang intact din, masyadong well thought of. Kaya nga ang kundi, parang may pagka-datedness. Kasi it could happen. It could have happened in any other time, especially the past. Given yung names na ito na kapatid or kaibigan sila, pero mga names nila usually ganun din. So, baka naman gusto rin ni Rayji na more sociality din ba? I mean, in some other stories, probably not this one, because they're already neat in themselves. Pero, yung parang, kapag may mga bravra in terms of playing with the form, queering the form. Ito naman parang may flatness in terms of the form because it really just parang I would have wanted more things done with the form, fiction or with a short story form. Hindi naman ganito ka, I mean, siguro, in some other stories, lalabas naman na hindi ganito klaseng domestic, napaka-intimate lang. Dalawang characters, isang lugar na sa bahay ang setting, etc. Baka naman pwede man sila siguro lumabas or something na magbibigay man sa atin ng kind of concreteness in the time rather than or in the place rather than simply it could have happened 10 years ago, 20 years from now, etc. Kasi yung language, parang Nick Booking na klase, no? The way we read ng Nick Booking when we were young, at the way we still read him, parang a kind of time warpedness dito sa ano to. I suppose may aim for classicism or universality of the time, pero at the same time, parang it does not address a more contemporary audience. Ano ko, parang yun ba yung point ng
Yan yung sinasabi ko yung campaign.
oo, na baka naman well, maybe if we go to another kind of yung kay Sigrid, baka we find another kind of framing or yung mobilization of the form na mas may excitement rather than nagkukwento doon. So sa akin parang nasayangan ako sa Maragondon kasi interesting case. Na parang di ba nag-factor in yung ganung klase yung locality. Pwede rin siya nangyari ito sa US or sa parang napakalamin din yung point ng writer.
Malakas na dalawang boses ko. Gusto ko yung pagsulat ng dalawang kwento. Sa itsura na publishable. I think yung gusto kong balikan yung unang tanong ni Joy kanina, alam mo what's lesbians about the story? At ako naman,
Please do.
ako naman, haka ko lang ito, kulang ko lang. Kasi parang yung mga character dito sa dalawang story, ng mga babae, parang nagkaroon na sila ng buhay, ng sariling kwento, na nawala yung mga husband nila. So I think yun, no? Kasi sa unang kwento, for Serafina, magkapatid sila, no? And then, hindi pa maganda yung relationship nila. Pero ngayong matanda na sila, wala na mga asawa nila, bigla nilang nakita yung halaga nila sa isa't isa. So kahit nag-aaway sila, kailangan pa nilang to grow together and to die, or batayan yung isa't isa, kapag sinong una sa kanila mamatay. So I think yan yung homosexual relationship, no, na una, pwede nagsimula lang talaga sa sex, no, sa lagman, pero pwede siya mag-develop into certain kind of friendship, no, or relationship na masigit pa sa mga kapatid. No? So I think yan yung bakla o yung lesbiana sa kwento. Saka yung sinasabi ko yung mga gundol, no? Kaya-expect ko, akala ko ba, mga gundol. Pero naisip ko rin, baka ito yung first story na tinatawag nila, no? Kasi kung ang Maragondon kasi history siya ng mga lalaki, no? Na Tagalog-centric, no? Na patriarchal. Ito naman, kaya siguro nasa bahay lang siya, sa kusina lang, kasi ito yung her story, no? Kailangan isulat ng mga babae yung sarili kasaysayan nila, no? Ito yung dito umiinom yung mundo nila. Naalala ko sa may isang feminist na nagsabi na kahit yung pagbabasag lang ng tasa ay kasaysayan na. So, ito sa isang intros pa libro. No? So baka ganun yun. No? Ito yung first story.
Siguro ba OA nagsabi siya?
She's over. She's over.
Yung pagbabasag lang ng tasa sa kusina ay kasaysayan na.
O kaya premonition na may namatay.
Nariyan sa nabasa ng panga. Or may burara.
Hindi nga premonition eh, talaga kasaysayan. Kasi, di ba kung babae ka, yung lalo na sa society nung napilitan mo ng asawa, sabi ko, hindi kailangan. Hindi ka mag-asawa, asawa, kung sino miswife sa pamilya. So, di ba mahalaga sa iyo yung mga bagay tulad ng sa gobyernos, no? So, pag masira yun, talaga makdaan mo kailan nabasa.
Serafina feels that she is going to follow suit, no? And so I think the main tension in the story for me is how that death wish is going to be countered. The arrival of the sister is the agency of the challenge. Because I think in the end, she, for example, she rearranged the furniture of the house. If you have been living in a house for a long time and somebody rearranges your furniture, the first time you enter that space, it looks like a new space. So it is a rebirth. You know? And for me, the most powerful line in this story is the penultimate line when Lucretia was frying the ginger, and suddenly in this house that is pale, that is dark, that has no life, that is on the verge of dying, suddenly leaps to life because of the strong smell of ginger. And I thought, wow, meron na siyang objective correlative, and it's the right detail. And it's not out of place, it's natural, and it is powerful, and it says there, the reaffirmation of life is right there. without explication. It's just give the detail and we sense that this house, this dying house, is going to live again for a short time. Because time is time. Ultimately, time will defeat you. But for a while, maski na yung daughter niya is not there anymore, the sister is there. And so the return of some of the forces of life have come back. And so Serafina is not going to die very soon. That is for me the resolution of the. But and then maganda ang itong to undercut, baka ang dating is too strong, the return of life. Meron kunting deprecating gesture at the end. You're better than nobody. And looking out of the window, para bang, but it is the kind of gesture that is playful, no? Akala mo you are trying to hurt the sister, but sisters and brothers are like that. They can be playful. They think that you are hurting them, but you are actually loving them. No? At saka yung maganda ang ganda ng story. Actually, the first time I saw this, she knows. Without so much of one line, bullseye. And so, if you have somebody like that, you better encourage the writer because this is only the beginning and marami pang magagawa. So, thank you very much for this story. I like the other story too. But, by the way, I don't know about the sisterly love as a first stage or early stage of lesbian. I don't know about that. But anyway, siguro, innocent siguro. So, brothers and sisters, when you were kids, you sometimes play sexual games, di ba? I don't know. Okay, I'm trying to solicit affirmation from you. Kids are kids. They are going to explore themselves. And so, they might not think of ito, lesbian love or gay love. They were just playing with themselves. No names. Because they are not up to that point yet. They don't know sin, they don't know. They just do it. Alright. So I would not like to force the issue about including the sense of possible lesbian. Because I think the story itself is already, for me, is already competent.
Yeah, we were just trying to show that the lesbian love is not necessarily a sexual love.
And also, at least the writer is clearly interested in the stories of women. And that's very, very good. That's something we would like to encourage.
Siguro bago maubos yung oras natin, just some matters of craft. Kasi hindi ko na kay Rayji yung story na Here Come the Women, para sa tingle. Kaya sabi ko, parang pwede konting revision. Konti lang. Kasi ang sa akin, maganda, syempre, kasi nga ipapublish na natin. I just wondered about the sudden change in the father. Medyo nabigla ako, parang hindi, anong nagbunsod doon sa pagbabago ng feelings ng tatay towards her, na suddenly on page 99, I realized last night actually that we, your mother and I, failed you. And then suddenly, go do whatever you want. Befriend Amanda, Chen. So hindi ko alam kung saan galing yung realization ng tatay. Obviously, this is not the story of the tatay, so hindi kailangan pahabain ng gusto yung epiphanic moment niya na I'm going to forgive you for all your failings. I suddenly realized that we failed you. Parang hindi ko alam kung ano yung necessity ng paglagay nung realization or nung reconciliation with the father. Could the story be told without having to draw attention to the reconciliation between the father and and Emilia. So, or if you feel na kailangan talaga yung reconciliation na yun bago ma-empower si Emilia to kiss Amanda, kailangan siyang, para sa akin, lagyan pa ng konti pang motivation para maintindihan ko na hindi ito magical moment of reconciliation between father and daughter. Kasi I think sa mga families, I think the less, I don't know about the men, but importante talaga sa lesbian yung eventually ma-accept siguro ng parents na yun yung choice nila. Although, I don't know if that's the aim of this particular scene. So it's something that the writer can explore in the revision. The other thing that I felt was a little too sudden was the kiss itself. Na medyo parang it feels for me a little parang again yung sa Binisaya na gipugos, no? Parang it's kind of tacked on. It feels tacked on to me na parang because it's a summer solstice reference, therefore there has to be a kiss. Yung parang kasi doon sa original, halikan mo yung paa. Ito, kailangan may kissing scene dahil dun sa reference, the allusion to summer solstice. But I feel like the kiss between the women needs to be prepared for, na parang doon parang earlier on in the story, gusto ko nararamdaman ko ng tingle. Gusto ko nararamdaman ko yung nagtitingle siya. Diba? Doon pa. Dapat nung nakita niya, naalala niya, nung elementary pa lang, natingle na siya doon sa ganda ni Amanda. Kasi dito, sa early on, sa page 99 pa lang niya sinabi na Amanda stood out how beautiful she was. Ang layo. Yung parang gusto kong makita na, siguro sa akin, bilang lesbian reader, na yung earliest ko talaga ng mga tingle, ay doon talaga doon sa elementary. Kasi nakakita ako ng pagkaganda-gandang classmate. Hindi ko maintindihan, no? Yung attraction ko. Kasi bata pa di ba? So, you don't think of it as sexual, pero nararamdaman mo yung tingle. So, maputi yung legs niya, or yung maputi siya, or maganda siya.
You wouldn't want it foreshadowed so visibly.
Not
Kasi
so
you want the kiss
visibly.
to be somewhat of a surprise also.
Merong surprise, pero huwag naman yung bigla. Saan galing, di ba? Parang sa akin, gano'n ang effect niya, na parang saan galing na, it just feels a little too tacked on. I need to be prepared for it, na hindi ito random na nangyayari sa mga babae na bigla na lang naglalaplapan. Ewan ko sa mga guys, ha? Kaya parang, before that, I'm a widow, and the next moment, laplapan. Di ba? Medyo hindi ako prepared. Kailangan ko ng konting foreplay. Ayan.
Foreplay may laplapan na mo.
Sa babae, ano na yun? Ay talaga mga bakla. You're so gross. So yan para sa akin, baka pwedeng silipin ni Rayji. Maliliit lang yun ang mga bagay, hindi yan malalaki yung mga bagay. Pwede yung konting hagod-hagod. Konting hagod lang. Para
problematic talaga yung St. John. Tingnan mo, on page 99. Who is St. John? Ang sagot ni Amanda, someone who survived. Someone who is going for. There are two St. Johns in summer solstice. There's a proper St. John who looks like a saint, and there's the other one that looks pagan.
The giant penis.
So actually, ang inaano nila, ang ginagawa ni Cook in there is pagan, the pagan energies, pre-existing Christianity, and the pagan energies have to do with the energies of the earth, energies of life and death, regeneration, the seasons, cosmic forces, ganyan, di ba? Ito, since you're lesbianizing it, you're lesbianizing it, ang nagka-problema na parang, you're saying that the history of women is to be found in male saints? A bit of a problem, no?
actually dito sa kopya ko, puro question mark yung paragraph na yun.
I didn't really have to fix that. I'm thinking, kasi tapos parang, the idea na parang there's way, the image of St. John, which looks like a child, they're dancing with it. O hindi ko na, ano yun, dahil sinulog ba yun? Parang, I don't know.
As big as a toddler lang naman.
Parang ang bata, oo. Hinihele-hele siya.
Oo, malaki.
Oo. Pero for me, that's a discordant note.
Yeah.
Tanggalin mo lang kayo, tanggalin mo yun. Tapos sa lang. Ay, actually. I don't know, diba? Tanggalin mo yung St. John masyado, downplay mo na lang.
Downplay. Kasi ako, yan talaga, pito talaga pito yung question mark ko dyan.
Oo.
Ito medyo major to. Kung i-revise yun, medyo...
Oo. Pero, hindi, magpapawas lang. Huwag na magtagal.
Paalisin. Si Yuna may sasabihin sa kanina, kaya alam mo medyo, nag-step out. Anything else?
They have to just sign paper.
May sasayan lang. O sige, anything else? Just conscious of time? Yes.
Yes, very brief. One thing I found distinct or noteworthy about summer solstice ay yung issue ng class. And that is somehow lost in this take. So that might be
The closeness of the name Amanda to Amanda, who was the maid na na-process na tatayin. When she husband couldn't touch her. Diba? Kasi the earth would wither, the light would not continue. Kasi she possesses that energy. But ano rin sinikunin mo ka rin, di ba? Yeah.
That the writer is quite accomplished in terms of her language, the use of language, and the knowledge of the form of the short story, which also is expressed in the homage to Nico Kim's Summer Solstice. We also mentioned that the other story, even though it doesn't say explicitly that it's homage to Nico Kim, also possesses that kind of maybe register and tone and the Baroque setting of the situation. We also talked about how the death for Serafina is also a lesbian story, even though it's not explicitly lesbian. We suggested that it may be embodied in the liminal period after the deaths of their husbands. It could also might be expressed in the relationship, the primal loving relationship between women, between the sisters. But it was also mentioned that it's LGBT writing is not necessarily about subject matter. It could be about perspective. But of course, as we mentioned yesterday, it really could be in the form. But dito sa dalawang kwento na to, clearly traditional ang approach to the short story. So, pwedeng isipin ni Rayji yung mga mention na concerns about stuckness in time, the anachronisms. Also could consider the static dimension of the setting. Maybe add more dynamism, even though they're in the Baroque mode. And then a little maybe concerns about the mythic level of St. John in the second story, and issues of craft, some small issues on craft and how the characters are developed throughout the story. Anything else? Sorry, hindi nagsalita si Nori.
Nire-reserve ko para namin.
Para sa...
Energy. Sa energy.
Kasi ikaw ang mag-doong ka kasi
Pero hindi. Actually, it's not, kung pwede lang, no, it's not about the stores kasi
oo naman, pwede naman, since wrap up.
Pero yung maybe the group, especially yung mga experts natin, can help me kasi I'm confused. Kung sinasabi natin na yung mga submissions ito sa workshop need not be 18 or LGBTQ, no? So ano pala yung hinahanap natin dun sa mga pyesa? No, that's one. Pangalawa, it brought me to the time when I started writing and the question was actually asked to me. Ano ka ba? Writer or gay writer? So, tinanong ko si Jack, ano ka? How do you identify yourself? Writer or gay writer? Sabi niya, writer who happens to be gay. So parang, naano lang ako na, kung hindi natin hinahanapan ng gay thing or LGBTQ thing, so, what will make it LGBTQ writing?
Yeah. So si Neil ang sasagot.
Ay, sorry naman. It's, when I came out as a gay writer, my identity is something that would no longer disavow. Because once you come out, you cannot uncome out it. So, I consider that everything I've ever written has been gay, even if they have not been about, like, cocksucking or butt-fucking or things like that. Because being gay means being a person, and being a person means your interests are varied and you live in a complex way and you have many kinds of interests, diba? So it's a matter of expanding really and dignifying our existence by saying that coming out as gay or lesbian does not ghettoize us into simply writing about our sexuality or desires, but it's about actually giving us the same kind of ability to universalize that straight people have. But please respect our particularity too. Meaning that, diba in great art, and that was something nice mentioned, except that wording was slightly different. The Jesuit sort of like writer that inspired her, diba? Only through the particular can you reach the universal. So, ano yung universal? We all want to be writers. But our embodiment is that we are gay and lesbian and all of that. And we become writers through our particularity. So you never neglect it. We are insisting that our reader be aware of it. Diba? So don't please erase that when you read our work, even if we're writing about many different things. Don't overlook the fact that we're coming from this perspective. So I hope you understand, this is about coming out. This workshop is about coming out. Diba? Some of us can't do it yet, like in the fullest sense. But this is the beginning of that journey. And in the end, we expand what being an LGBTQ writer means to actually just, hopefully, in the end, being a writer and being just a person. But that would be the ideal, right? Except we can't get there without insisting on the dignity of our own embodiments, our particularities. So, what do we look for if it's not topic? We look for your attitude, your perspective, your alliances, your sympathies, your ethics. I'm sorry. Diba? Hanapin mo yun. Kasi parang kung halimbawa, LGBTQ Writers Workshop, pero mga sinasabit ko dito, misogynistic. I'm sorry, di ba? Ikaw, correct ka na namin. Ano yung perspective ako? Diba? Misogynistic, o kaya internalized homophobia, o kaya paminta ka kasi, galit ka sa mga trans, mga ganyan mo dito. Dapat kang pagsabihan, diba? Dapat kang i-correct. Ganon. It is productive, I tell you. Imagine, we did the same thing for poetry. And so, in a poetry suite, one fellow would have 2 queer poems and 5 universal sounding poems. Sometimes about the environment, sometimes about religion, sometimes about politics. That whole complexity is embraced, therefore, to be harnessed towards expanding of what LGBTQ writing can mean and what the LGBTQ perspective might be. Diba? Hindi rin siya prescriptive in a way kasi we're actually also pluralizing it But we are, in fact, insisting that you be aware of it. Yun yung an awareness of it. And let's face it, only in this safe space can we talk about the things we've been talking about. Right? Ito nga, hindi ka malaswa dito. Ikaw na may pinaka-conservative. Ito kasi pag normal writing workshop, siya yung bastos
Pag normal.
Yung in that store, the normies. Pero yun na nga, okay. Walang value-free workshop. yung so-called formalism is impossible. As we cannot be operationalized. Like Edith Tiempo, in my first experience with her in Siliman, I gave a poem about receiving communion, and the communicant couldn't swallow the host because it was God and it was too much. So he ended up spitting it. She refused to worship it. She said, I am no longer Catholic, but I feel offended for my Catholic friends. Yes. Sabi ko, di ba formalism to? Bakit may ganun? Kasi na imposible. Imposible talaga. So, now that we know that walang value-free workshop, okay, we insist on the value of our lives. On the value of our desires, on the value of our identities, subjectivities, di ba? So we centralize it, but it doesn't mean we neglect craft or everything else. Politics and poetics can be the same, can coexist mutually, implicate each other, can enrich each other. That's how we've been doing it. Yung notes na to, radical notes to, and on creative writing pedagogy. We should publicize this because this needs to be done more.
Yes.
Di ba, why do we parang hypocrisy pa na, okay, wag ka muna magsalita, the writer's dead for the moment. Why? You're alive, you're the writer, we affirm your life, at the same time we affirm your art.
Yes.
They're one and the same. Di ba? Well, life is greater. But for now, they can be one and the same. But thank you for asking, Nora. And I hope that clarified things a bit, even if some people are not listening. Gaganda naman, no?
Hindi nga nila napansin. Napansin na sila.
Ano na now, philosophizing, hindi ko nakikinig. No, i-prepare nyo na lang. Mauulit ito, I think, in the further discussion kasi ang complex ng mga kwento ninyo, hindi natin pwede ikahon sa theme lang. So nakikita mo in Death for Serafina, it's actually commentaries on hierarchies of like being. Hindi lang naman, wala talagang sexuality doon di ba? It's really the privileging of men over women, the privileging of what good smell over bad smell. Naawa ko sa Serafina, parang you kicked her too much. Diba? First, binigyan mo na siya.
Papaliwanag niya kay Rayji. Yung kanya, bakit ba baho kasi talaga ni Serafina? Ano ba?
Okay, so mostly she wants her children to come to us. Specifically, Elnora. So nagpapapansin siya basically. Pero, the death, what is the death in the story? It's the death of her past habits, of how she wants to die. It dies, and it's a rebirth, basically, with sisterly love, companionship. So yung Death for Serafina, I based the dynamics between me and my younger sister.
Hindi naliligo.
I based Serafina on my...
Tsaka leopard print moves. But paano kita sa nice note kasi you would think medyo slogan-y, pero nagka-leopard prints. Diba? So medyo complex siya.
Yung basis ko kay Serafina, vicious ang lola ko. Vicious ang lola ko. So, pero yung dynamics sa akin at sa younger sister ko, kasi she asked it an older sister, kasi I have a mental illness, I have bipolar 1 disorder. So she needs to take care of me, and at first, when we grew up, she was bullying me, which kind of exacerbated the disorder. Pero now, she's trying to take care of me, and the act of bullying that I experience hinders me from accepting that help. So I wanted to have, there was a question whether it was an intervention or an invasion. It's both. And I wanted to portray a compromise between them. That you can't just invade and for her to accept. You have, like, Lucretia can't just invade and impose herself. she needs to adjust as well for Serafina. And Serafina needs to accept the help that she needs. So like it's an acceptance then of what I experienced, because 2016 to 2017 was a bad time for me. So going to Here Come the Women, I wanted, you know, the usual criticism of feminism of summer solstice. It was actually written for a CL 150 class. And we were supposed to retell a story that we liked. And I really like summer solstice, but also I really hated it.
The best reason, right?
So this writing is a criticism. That's why I told it as for me as a gay woman, what is equality for me? What will empower me is equality between women and just take out the men. I'm sorry. Basically,
Okay lang.
I think
Give that to us.
Yeah. Yours
the idea of being in a relationship with women, with a woman, is what is equality like for me? What is empowering for me? And that's my criticism. It's not the reversal of roles, it's lesbianism.
Yeah.
So, about the mythology, it's kind of a belief that I had because we go to this person that has open third eye and heals a healer in Ternate actually. So we go to Ternate. When my mom brought me to him and for my depression, he told me to pray to the Mama Mary in Baclaran because the Mama Mary in Baclaran is more powerful than the Mama Mary in Quiapo, where my older sister, prayed for a job. So I was like, there's a hierarchy of Mary when they're all the same Marys but different titles. So I thought, oh, there's something inhabiting them, that there is a hierarchy of power. So I thought that what inhabits them predates the Hispanic, the Catholic, and that's what I wanted to incorporate in this. But I didn't realize the trans idea, which I should take note of in my revision. So thank you for pointing that
Kung
out.
babae na lang yung kanilang image na
Si St. John.
si St. John. Kaya lang, hindi na siya tatarin.
Yeah.
So let me see, how do you do that?
Kaya mo na siya.
Drop it na lang.
Kaya na niya yun.
Kaya na niya.
So
Kasi importante yung kiss eh.
about the kiss, it's not actually the kiss that I was trying to make important, but like the kiss on the hand, because I wanted to the kiss of the foot, and I wanted to do the kiss of the hand.
Mas romantic.
Pero na-overshadow siya ng kiss on the lips.
Okay.
So I guess in my revision I should focus on the kiss on the hand. And
The echo bag. The laser.
the echo. Yeah, I intended it to be said in like now.
Okay.
But so these two stories are part of like what I intend for my thesis this coming school year, and eventually a collection of short stories about women and the rural, and basically about being a woman, a bisexual woman in the rural, and other forms of womanhood in the rural, etc. And what people think don't exist in the rural, I wanted to put it there. Like, I have another story about being mananagal, etc. So,
But they're all at the same class, no? More or less, middle class characters. Wala nang mga farmer women. You tried?
Not yet. Kasi I based Emilia in Here Come the Women on my mother when she was suffering through a terrible husband. Except the husband did, unfortunately. unfortunately. So anyway, there was a question of whether I write about myself. I write about myself in a way, and my experience, and my mom's
We're always
experience.
writing about ourselves.
But I can't tell it directly.
It's still fiction. It's more fiction.
That's why I don't write essays that much. So, thank you for the comments. They're really helpful. Thank you so much.